Hi, good evening. I'm Lonnie Stonich, the Executive Director of FAN. We're a nonprofit that presents programming exploring human development across the lifespan. I am so excited to welcome you to tonight's conversation between three favorite people, John Duffy, Shaka Rawls, and Heidi Stevens. Thanks for joining us tonight. Our YouTube channel has an archive of over 300 videos of past events, 200 of them with Heidi interviewing incredible people. So be sure... That was a joke. So be sure to subscribe to the channel to get updates when new recordings are posted. We love Heidi. And now for some introductions. Dr. John Duffy is a highly sought-after clinical psychologist, best-selling author, podcaster, and parenting and relationship expert. He has been working in his clinical practice with individuals, couples, teens, and families for over 25 years. He has written 3 books intended to provide parents with the tools to help their teens and young adults thrive in this persistent age of anxiety, including his latest one, Rescuing Our Sons. We were thrilled to host Dr. John Duffy in January of 2020, right before the pandemic. We just love him and his work. Shaka Rawls is in his 7th year as principal at Leo High School in the Auburn-Gresham neighborhood on Chicago's South Side. He received his bachelor's in history from Aurora University and a master's in educational leadership from the University of Illinois at Chicago. He's currently completing his doctorate in educational policy studies at UIC as well. Before coming to Leo, he worked for Chicago Public Schools. His efforts focused on the challenges facing public and charter schools in some of Chicago's most disadvantaged urban communities. As the first African-American alumnus to serve as principal in Leo's 96-year history, Mr. Rawls has overseen a 65% increase in enrollment, Go team, over the last 5 years. Maybe those numbers need to be updated even, as well as a 21% improvement in test scores. Leo has achieved a 100% graduation rate among its seniors in each year of Mr. Rawls's tenure. I like that. Heidi Stevens, our dear Heidi Stevens, is a Chicago-based writer and the creative director of Parent Nation, an initiative of the University of Chicago's TMW Center for Early Learning and Public Health. Prior to joining the University of Chicago, TMW, Heidi worked at the Chicago Tribune for 23 years, where she wrote a daily column called Balancing Act, now a nationally syndicated weekly column. Heidi has served on the FAN board of directors since September of 2021. We're very lucky people. And now let's welcome John Duffy, Shaka Rawls, and Heidi Stevens.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Heidi.
Good evening.
Hi, Shaka.
Good to see you, John.
How's your week going?
Good.
So far, so good. This is a good midweek thing to do.
That's good, right?
Yeah.
I'm very excited for this conversation. Thank you guys for being here.
Well, thanks for having.
Of course. John, I think you're going to set the scene for us a little bit. Tell us what your book is about, what you hope your book does, and why you felt called to write it.
Yeah. First of all, I'm really grateful to be here to talk about this. It's a really, really important topic. I'm really worried about our sons. It's a heavy topic, and I'm hoping that we can bring some lightness to it. So I'll start by talking about my caffeine intake during the week.
So much better than your bourbon intake, right. I guess.
So I've noticed a couple, right, exactly, Heidi, thank you. About 6 months ago, I noticed on Tuesdays, on a work day, I would drink an entire venti iced coffee, and I would be tired at the end of the day. On Wednesdays, I'd barely drink any of it. I'd pour it out, and I'd feel great at the end of the day. So we psychologists, loving to do our research in depth, I look at my calendar app on my phone for 3 minutes to see what's the difference, and I notice I see boys, adolescent boys on Tuesdays. I see teenage girls on Wednesday. So briefly, what a session is like with a teenage girl. She comes in, she's going through all the things. She's going through depression and anxiety and relationship issues and body image issues and everything you can imagine that an adolescent is suffering from. But she comes in and she is alert and she is engaged. She's sitting on the edge of the couch. She's leading the session. She's talking in rich detail about emotionally what's going on in her life, what's going on with the people around her, what she thinks is, the emotional arc of what should happen. Mm-hmm. It's amazing to it's a work of art to do a session with a teenage girl. Our boys are not imbued with that same rich emotional language. So this is one of the main reasons that I'm worried for them is still in 2024, too often our boys are stuck with sad, mad, glad, bad, angry. They're not sure. And imagine like these are kind, thoughtful young men who cannot connect the way they're thinking with the way they're feeling, right? And that disconnect is really brutal for them. And their inclination is to kind of step away from all that, step away from connection, right? Masculinity is in recent years another big issue for boys. The word they most affiliate with it is toxic. Am I by nature toxic, just by virtue of the fact that I'm a boy? And so they look toward their natural role models, their fathers typically. And they're not necessarily, note to any men out there, seeing what they like. They're saying like, and they're telling me this all the time, you guys, I don't think my dad's a very happy guy. I don't think he's in love. I don't think he has good friends. I don't know if he listens to music. Whereas mom is out there reinventing herself and doing all these different things and starting businesses and doing Pilates. I don't know what dad's up to. I don't want that life. I'm going to go play video games. So they tap out of their lives almost altogether. And what takes the place, because they're trying to figure out like what makes the man, is they're wondering forever, like, can I be like strong and sensitive? Can I be vulnerable and masculine? And does this all fit together? Can I love the Chiefs and can I love Taylor Swift at the same time? Right. And they really don't know the answers to these questions. So they turn to places that I don't think we know they're turning to. They're turning to podcasts. They're turning to pornography. They're turning to video games, and they're turning to YouTube videos. All on screens, all alone, all like very, very inert activity. So they're not moving. And very quickly, the podcasts our boys are listening to, you may not know them, but some of the names that might come to mind are Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, Pat McAfee, Dave Portnoy. These are really entertaining podcasts, and they go on for hours. Our boys are super engaged in them, but every once in a while, something slips in there. You're like, was that misogynistic, or was that, racist, or was that an awful thing to say? And our boys are kind of gaining a point of view. And if we're not listening with them, if we have no idea what this is about, they don't have either a counterpoint or any way to be discerning about what it is they're taking in. Porn is driving a lot of what our boys are thinking and feeling about most everything from 8 or 9 years old. So if you picture like little meters being calibrated around masculinity, femininity, sexuality, intimacy, violence, our boys' meters are really, really poorly calibrated to the point where we know they're not even seeking intimacy out. They're telling me, I'm not even having that physical reaction that you would think I should have. And they're sort of questioning themselves and their sexuality sometimes, or their virility. And this robs everybody, girls included, because girls are asking me, where are the boys? Like they're awesome, and we're beautiful, and we're cool, and where are the boys? And and it's a fair question. They're tapped out.
They're disconnected.
Yes. So just to finish up, our boys are turning a lot to drugs, and the drug of choice right now is weed. Not because it gets boys high. Most of them tell me it just gets them by. One boy told me yesterday, he said, it's like declaring myself dead. If I like vape first thing in the morning, and I have a little bit of an edible later in the day, and I smoke some flower later in the day, then I can just kind of almost declare myself dead until something good happens, just in case something good happens. So it's kind of like opting out of life for a really important developmental span of time. And there's a lot of boys doing this, and we're just not seeing them because they are in basements and they are in bedrooms. So it is no surprise that our boys are completing suicide more frequently. They're attempting it more frequently. They think about it more frequently. And they feel passively suicide more frequently. What I specifically hear is, Duffy, I don't know if I'm going to do anything to hurt myself. I don't think I have the energy to do that. But if a bus hit me walking out of here, that would be okay. So those are some of the reasons I'm worried about our guys. Now, there's a lot we can do about that. But you might have some thoughts before we jump right to conclusions, to solutions rather.
Yeah, I definitely want to get to the solutions, and I'm eager to hear what they are. I want to hear, Shaka, from you, how what Duffy's describing squares with what you experience and witness day in and day out at your school and with the boys that you're in community with.
So if you look at the general prescription of society and its assessment of boys, the idea is that you're either this or that, right? This kind of duality of conversations. You're either masculine or feminine. You're either, macho or soft, right? And so I think that in fact squares with what I see every day. But I think that actually that lends us the opportunity to really engage young men in conversations about you can be both, right? And I think just to Duffy's point about, do I like the Chiefs or do I like Taylor Swift? I actually like Taylor Swift because of the Chiefs, right? So I became a Swiftie because she was at the game, right? So so I think that we can use these avenues of intersection of saying that through my masculinity, I can find, that there are softer sides to me. Through my tough exterior, I can find that there's a gentle, softer side of me, right? Through my harsh aggression, I can find caring and compassion, right? And so I think that we're actually looking at this probably not as this you're either or, but actually this is a gateway into having both of these emotions kind of coincide. And this is kind of what we do. And I'm not saying that this is 100% true all the time at Leo High School, but this is kind of what we do at Leo, right? Our goal is to embrace where our young men are, but also allow them to enter into a different space. I think that one of the things that we do at school, and I will say this 100 times, is that our commerce is love. We trade in love, right? And schools normally don't work that way, right? Normally schools trade in the production of better academics, right? The dissemination of discipline, dissemination of knowledge, right? But if you center love, you could say that although there are consequences, although there's discipline, there's also compassion and there's caring and there's support for each other. And so I think that if we start to look at these challenges as actually opportunities, and I don't want to sound, this is not utopia. This is difficult and probably impossible in most cases, but that's actually where we should engage this work, where it's almost impossible. If we look at these as opportunities to expand our vocabulary, right? To say that I'm mad is a very primitive emotion. I always tell the boys, it's easy to be mad. It's easy to be, but when I get to say my feelings are hurt, right? Say I'm wounded, right? Say that I'm emotionally scarred by what you did. Like that's getting to really excavating what's actually happening. And so I think that us being able to engage conversation at a deeper level and not so much in its primitive form, which is what will allow us to really excavate, how children are feeling and allowing us to be comfortable with saying things like, my feelings are hurt or I'm sad, right? Like to say you're sad as a man actually is a moniker of weakness, right? And it's like, well, weakness isn't actually bad. You can be weak at some points, as I can be strong as well. So again, the dichotomous language that we use when we're describing boys, girls, and even gender, right? Sexuality, right? Once we start to dismantle those things, I think we need to dismantle it across the board. And I think that would allow us much richer conversations. And I know, Duffy, you know this, and through your conversations with young folks. But what I see at school is that when we have an environment where those words are welcomed and actually are encouraged, and then what we see is the actions follow. And modeled.
So, sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I watch you model that.
Yeah, but what you see is actions follow, right? And so I was walking into the building a couple of days ago, fussing at a student for having, I don't know, his shirt untucked, and he looked at me and said, "Good morning." And I said, I'm sorry, I should probably say good morning before I start fussing at you, right? And that just shows like the spirit of love that we have in the building. It reminds me that we're human beings first, right? Regardless if we were 16 or 65. And I think that if we engage each other on our humanity, we'll get a lot more traction through our interactions.
I love that.
Good, Heidi.
Yeah, no, it reminds me of the excerpt that this is what first honestly got the three of us talking about having this conversation in the first place, was when I was reading your book, John. I guess it was probably early December, maybe even late November, because it was a, early edition of it. I sent this part to Shaka, and maybe this will launch us into some of the solutions that I know we want to talk about. But you wrote, sometimes hurting boys and men turn their self-loathing, hopelessness, loneliness, and lack of a sense of belonging inward. Sure, hurt people, but far more often, boys and young men cause harm to themselves, sometimes overtly and at other times quite covertly. I would argue that this is why the rate of attempted and completed suicide continues to climb for boys and men, eclipsing that of girls and women by a significant margin. But they also turn this angst outward toward the world. Lacking the full vocabulary and set of tools to find the help to heal and become emotionally healthy, they turn outward with the limited tools they have. The result of their anger and hurt may make headlines, or it may seethe quietly, almost certainly going on to infect another generation. So maybe we could talk about that, lacking the full vocabulary and set of tools, and what we as parents, educators, clinicians, any stakeholders in raising healthy humans can do.
Yeah. No, and to Shaka's point, I think that's the key, is like, modeling that. And, what I know about Shaka and what I so admire about you is, there's going to be, because boys are still wobbly about like, what exactly is masculine, and is it okay to be sad? Is it okay to say, hey man, you really hurt my feelings there? You know, boys are pretty good at doing this for one another sometimes. Sometimes I think it's us, it's our generation that's reluctant to allow that for them, right? Because we're playing a different role. We're playing this parenting role. So we talk to them in this completely different way. Like when I work with young boys, they'll often tell me like somewhere around 10, 11, 12, 13, somewhere in there, my parents started policing me. So we stopped connecting. My feelings didn't seem to matter a whole lot. Managing my behaviors seemed to be what the house was about, and
They don't
still
light
does.
up when I walk in the room anymore. They don't hug
Right.
me. They don't laugh at my jokes. Yeah. It
Right.
all switches. Yeah. Turn into a cop.
So I'm thinking of more than one video I've seen of you, Shaka, where you are walking into a room full of high school boys and just overpowering them with emotion and this like a positive energy coming from a man who is a male role model, and kind of, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to fire up for you guys until you meet me where I am. And, like, I think if I'm asking parents in that book, and that's in that like paragraph, to do anything, it's like, oh, don't back off just because your kid doesn't respond immediately. He's not going to. So you're going to have to play a long game with him. And if you need to be tenacious, even if you need to say, you know what, I'm gonna be a pain in the neck. I'm gonna be a pain in the ass. I'm gonna be on you, and I'm gonna keep talking at you like a human being, because I realize I might not have been doing that the last few years, and I want to correct that. Like, I think.
Hang on one second though. I'm going to be on you in what way? Like, expand on that a little bit. I'm going to be a pain in the ass and I'm going to be on you, meaning I'm going to check the parent portal, or meaning
No,
I'm going to
right.
like sit here
Thank
and
you.
sing next to you while you're like, what do you mean by I'm going to be on you?
I do not mean check the parent portal.
Okay.
I do not mean that. Thank you, Heidi. I mean, I'm going to show you my positive regard for you. You are going to feel my love. I'm going to check in with you, and I'm not just going to ask, hey, how was your day, and wait for a yes or no answer. I'm going to hang with you. I'm going to listen to the podcast with you. I worked with this boy recently. I'll be brief, but I love this story. He is usually here in the office. He plays up the whole stoner role, I don't go to school that often. I know the security guard real well. I can pay him off. He'll let me out of school, right? He plays up this whole thing. And it almost feels like, oh, I totally get why this kid's parents are totally fed up with him. He brings nothing to the table. Then I have one virtual session with him. He's in his bedroom, and lining his bedroom walls are guitars. And I said, hey man, what's with the guitars? And he said, oh, I'm taking this arts class and we had to pick a thing that we did. So I bought these old acoustic guitars. I put nylon strings on them so I can play classical music. And I wrote a little bit. It's junk, never mind. And I'm like, no, get the guitar down, play me a song, right? Play me something right now. And he plays this 5-minute piece of music that he wrote that was gorgeous. I'm not being hyperbolic. It was astounding. And when I talked to his parents next, I do some coaching with them. I'm like, have you heard him play? And they said, yeah, he's taking a class or something. I think he's tinkering around up there. I don't really know what he's doing. And I'm like, go up there now, like be done with me, skip this session, go up there and have him play for you right now. And you will find you won't stop yourself from lighting up. And there's something amazing about every kid. Like I think we're all very, very optimistic about this generation. And I'm guessing none of the three of us have met a kid where we're like, this one, not so much, you know? So, you know, like every kid has something amazing about them. Find the amazing thing. Don't light up and let it be BS. Like, you know, they will see right through that. Find the real things. Find the amazing things about your kid. And it might not be what you want it to be. It might be that they're amazing at Call of Duty. But hey, man, that's still something. Play it up. All right.
What do you say to that, Shaka?
There's a couple of points I want to just kind of piggyback on, because I think that this actually switches the paradigm between the parent as the purveyor of knowledge, right? The person that knows the thing, and the kid is the one that should receive the thing, right? The same thing that we do at school. If you just shift that just a little bit to say that my students come in my building every single day with a knowledge base that's greater than mine, it's different from and greater than mine. Once you acknowledge that, then you know that they come in here with just as much capital in this educational space as I have. I may understand the content, I may understand the way schools work, but I don't understand the content and the way schools work on 79th Street, living in Auburn-Gresham, right? So there's these caveats that exist, which gives them just as much capital inside of our building. And we have to expand upon that, right? So I was thinking about what you were saying. I think a great analogy was that every time I'm a Chicago Bears fan, right? And so society teaches me that when the Bears lose, I'm mad. Right? That's the social construct of when the Bears lose, right? Which happens a lot. But what actually happens when the Bears lose is my feelings are hurt. I'm sad, right? So I'm able to, so if we start to articulate, the actual feeling is sadness, right? It's disappointment. It's being let down. If we get to the crux of those words and say, hey, those words are okay, even in athletics, right? It changes the dynamic of you're mad or sad, right? You're like, I'm hurt, I'm disappointed, I'm let down. Once again, I feel abandoned by my team. I feel like, you know, we need to do something about a stadium. Anyway, I'm sorry. Sorry. So John mentioned, so I'll use it as a kind of the impetus for me to go into some other things. One is the pep talks that I give the boys during the day in the school. And John, here's the thing, just using the same ideology, those pep talks are really for me. Right. And I know it probably doesn't come off this way on social media, but I really don't want to go to work every day. Like I would love to get paid to not go to work. That's like a dream job of mine, just to get money every day, just to cash. But when I'm giving those pep talks, I'm actually creating the ethos where we can encourage each other to be in this space together. And so I think that, again, I'm destroying that dichotomous relationship where I'm the teacher, I'm the principal, I know everything. I'm like, no, I'm struggling to be in this space just like you are. There are a million other things that I would rather do. Surfing, sailboating, you know, skiing. I can name them all. But we're here. And if we're here, we're going to make the best, you know, make this the best place possible. I mean, you'll hear me say this in my videos. I have no idea what I'm doing. Every single day, I'm presented with a series of challenges that really dismantles my position as authority in this school. I create these systems that I think are ironclad, that are kid-proof. And there's a 16-year-old boy who could dismantle that system in 3 seconds, right? And I create systems that are kid-proof for a living. And they are always, always, always broken by some 16-year-old kid who's smarter than me. So now I walk into my building and say, hey, I know I'm not the smartest person here. My job is to co-create these systems with you. So we're not trying to dismantle these things. We actually, if we co-create them, now we're trying to make sure that they're successful together. And this is similar to your conversation about the construction of music. The child now has the ability to create something that the parents are unaware. So you shift the dynamic between the child being the object to now he's being the subject, right? And so the idea is that now the child has some agency. The word agency kept coming to mind when you were talking. And I think that if we give young folks agency, they won't feel like they're passively going through life or things are happening to them, right? They're numb, if you will, using your words, right? And so my goal is to, and what we try to do, and it's not successful all the time, it happens, but what I felt as a young child growing up and being a student at Leo, I felt a lack of sense of agency. I thought no one listened to me, no one cared about it, no one cared about what I thought. Even going to college, even going to grad school, my opinions were always secondary to what the canon says or secondary to what the professor says. So once you get that, when you find your voice, right? And whether it's through music or whether it's through arts or whether it's through academics or whether it's through athletics, when you find your voice, then you feel like your space in life is warranted. You matter to people. Prior to that, I think that you're constantly going through life as an addition to, as a plus one, especially if you're a younger sibling, or especially if, I have two older siblings who were substantially smarter than me in high school. So I spent my life just kind of like, I'm a C student, right? Me residing to that, right? Really, it actually muted my voice until I got back, I got to grad school and realized that my C's were really solid B's in some cases, and in some cases they're A's, right? So it just depends on in which venue are my talents being displayed. And in your case, it was the guitar, right? And in this musical venue, this child's talents were being displayed. So I think as parents, as nurturers, as shepherds, I often refer to myself as a shepherd, our goal is to find the venue, find the field, find the sport, find the location in which a child's talents can be displayed. And whether that's going through a myriad of different things. My daughter's a swimmer now, and she found soccer later on, right? And so finding these opportunities for students to succeed, experience some success. Now, it doesn't mean that they have to be the best at it, but just experience some success, whether it's academic, whether it's social emotional, right? Finding how to relate to people. These are things that I found really bring out the best in our young folks across the board. So
maybe I'm oversimplifying it, and you guys correct me if I am, but it feels like you're saying a lot of times boys don't feel like the world is happy to see them. They don't feel like the world is happy that they're there. And in some cases, they feel like they're even the problem, right? I mean, Shaka, I've heard you say to your boys, like, the world is not going to be kind to you. The world doesn't like you. The world doesn't like me. I'm speaking what you say, so like, don't give them more reasons, right? Like, we got to perform at a top level. We got to, so, and Duffy is different maybe as your clientele is from Shaka, your student body. It feels like what you're saying in your book is that boys feel like I walk in a room and I automatically feel like I'm assumed to be the problem, right? Even though
or worse, I don't matter. I'm not even necessary or important. I might not even be the problem. I'm just not part of the solution either. I'm nowhere, man. I'm nothing.
Yeah. So I wonder, as parents, and again, the list of roles that we're talking about here, clinicians, educators, stakeholders, but I think a lot of people in the audience are probably parents. How do we undo that impression for boys while we also sort of acknowledge it is out there? I mean, I guess this is my way of asking, like, how much time do you spend acknowledging, yes, this is what the world thinks of you in this moment, comma, here's what we do about that, rather than period, so that sucks. I guess maybe find some pot or porn or Pat McAfee, right? Like, how do you do that? That's like, acknowledges the hard thing, moves past the hard thing.
Yeah. So I'll just throw out a thought or two. One is to be overt about that, right? To literally have that conversation with your kid, and this, everything we're talking about, if you take a step back, requires parents to reinvent parenting in a lot of ways, right? Because we can't think like, what did my mom or dad do in this circumstance, right? That's not going to work with today's kids. Everything we're talking about, none of us were parented the way we're talking, right? In this deep, thoughtful, emotional way, right? It's okay, son, for you to be sad. Like, Shaka, I'm guessing your dad never said that to you. My dad never said that to me, man. So part of it is like redefining that idea. And I love your thought there of recognizing the degree to which you are not the expert. And that alone, lighting up, I think, for your kid and instilling that little modicum of hope he needs, that little crack, that might be all it takes is a recognition that, hey, I'm not directive. I don't even know exactly what I'm doing here. So we're collaborating on this thing. Like, if you're lost in some way, if you're broken in some way, we're going to have to figure this out together. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I don't have all the solutions. All I can tell you is I'm on your team. And that's what I think kids need to hear from their parents as much as anything else is I'm on your team. And that kind of speaks to what you were saying, Heidi. Like that tells them you matter, you're important, right? Yes, there are some issues with boys and men in society, and you are probably catching some of the wind of that, and maybe you deserve some of the wind of that. Maybe you have made some contribution to that with some snide remark online or some meme you've sent that you thought was like snarky but funny or whatever. But we also know you're a really, really important, good person. So we, mom and dad, are here for you in a really genuine way, and we're going to be overt about that. So I think when I talk about like that overwhelming energy, I picture like this tidal wave of positivity that's genuine. I think that has to be emphasized. That has to wash over our boys, and if they pick up on a drop off that wave, they'll have enough hope to make it through, and our kids are going to go through hard things. Like, nothing about this book or this discussion is going to suggest like, this is going to solve adolescent depression and anxiety and, all body image issues, because it absolutely is not. But if it instills enough hope and enough like I matter feeling, like, enough self-esteem, then they can carry on, and knowing like, okay, I can navigate the hard thing. I don't need the weed to navigate the hard thing because I got people I can rely on. You know what I mean? I'm connected. So I'm not in a silo here, disconnected on my own. That's everything to me. Like if I can get a boy who's on that couch in that position, thinking that way, and his parents really feeling that way. And that to me is the trickier part, is to get the parents on board, like, and not have them thinking, no. If we can just manage this one behavior, we can just get him studying for another hour a night, then I think we're fine. Or if we could just get the weed out. But parents then are playing whack-a-mole. They're just like, I can knock down one behavior, another one's going to rise up, and I'm going to wonder like, well, I bought all the parenting books that Lonnie sent me, and I still nothing's working. And it's because they're not, that connection isn't there, right? That collaborative, like, we're together on this isn't there.
Shaka, you have thoughts?
I think that John, you hit the nail on the head. I think that's amazing, and that's exactly right. And I think at the crux of what you're saying is that we need to give students or children agencies, particularly boys, and remind them that society indicts everyone, right? If you look at society at writ large, right, society doesn't really like anyone, right? White men, African-American men, women, gay, lesbian, like all of the things, like everyone is actually ostracized. If you look at society, no one's actually fitting inside their actual norm of society. So everyone is persecuted in society. And so then I tell the boys to look at it like, well, society needs me in order to build that bridge, right? They need me to have these conversations. They need me to stand in this gap because it doesn't like anyone. So I want to show them, this version of me that may be more palatable for people, because everyone is persecuted. I mean, I don't think society really has a target anymore. I think any construct of person is seen to be demonized sometimes by any branch of whatever. So our goal is to make sure that students feel a sense of agency. I always tell the boys, the world needs you, right? And so and it's probably I get some flack about saying this, but at 49 years old, my athletic career is over, right? At 5'6", my dreams of being an NBA player probably diminished a bit. Me making $1 million as a high school Catholic school principal is probably not going to happen. And so South Beach is not going to happen. So like my role on this earth is really just to nurture the next generation. So I always tell the boys, like, I need you to carry the mantle. I did all of this work. So I need you to take this a little bit further, right? That gives them a sense of agency, right? I can do a little bit, just do a little bit better than me, right? I hopefully you'll make the $1 million I always wanted to make. You'll write the 3 books, John, that I always wanted to write, right? So I want to, just kind of keep pushing them forward so that they'll feel like they're in a continuum and not the first person to experience oppression, to experience depression, to experience sadness, to experience substance abuse, right? I can look at them in a very similar fashion and say, actually, your job is to carry what I've done a little bit further. And my goal is just to support you through it. So, and I tell the boys all the time, I got your back. You don't know how many conversations I've had with mothers defending their children, right? Because I think the boys need an advocate, right? And so I'm saying, I have your back, so now I need you to do this for me. And that gives students a sense of agency. And I think that we often forget that, right? Teenage boys are often categorized in certain stigmas, right? They're stoners, or they're skater boys, or they're goths, or they're hip hop kids. Like, all these things kind of happen, and they don't remember that their individuality is actually what's going to make them successful. The fact that you don't fit into so many places is actually what's going to make you special. And being a young kid from the South Side of Chicago, from Woodlawn, who didn't fit into so many spaces, I realized that was actually my niche, right? I didn't have the normal paradigm. I didn't see things the way normal people see them. And actually, it became a bit of a superpower for me. I can look around corners and sometimes see through walls, right? It's like getting students to understand that all the things that you use to get to this point in life are actually your skills that you can hone and refine in order to make you much successful later on in life.
That's the trickiest part, I think, about what both of you do, and also what parents have to do, right? Is because you're trying to help your kid. What? My computer's telling me I'm speaking in a language that's not English. I don't know any other languages, so that would be impressive. Sorry, you're trying to solve for this moment, right? But also give them a set of skills that's going to carry them through life, right? And help them be successful, whatever they end up doing after high school, once they hit their 20s, once they hit their 30s, once they maybe have kids of their own or a partner in life. And so you're sort of thinking immediate and long-term all the time and weighing the two, right? So that's a tricky needle to thread.
It is. What I like about Shaka's approach, and I try to adopt this pretty frequently, is, first of all, I love that idea that, like, you're not really being singled out to the degree you think you are, right? We're all being singled out at some point in time, right? So to almost remove that from the equation, and to deliver agency to them. What I like is that next step, and where I see like a little fire in the eye is when it's like, not just like agency, like you can make it through this, on your own, but like, hey, there's a mandate for you to do great in this world. Like, we have this expectation, right? Like I Shaka, I worked hard to get here, and now, like, I'm just gonna be honest with you, like, you don't have the right, you can't check out now. Like you've got to work through this thing and figure it out, and because you have things to do, and what you think are your big weaknesses are, and I'm going to overuse a word that I actually kind of love, are your superpowers, right? So think that this idea that, like, oh, I have all these feelings and they're really holding me back. And it's like, no, we need emotionally intelligent men, and you've got that, and you're willing to express your feelings, and we're on a planet that needs emotional healing across the board. So sorry, you got to stick around, and that is your work. That is your mandate. And when you can turn that corner with a teenage boy and they can own that, then they're in. And what Shaka, I bet you get, what I get too often is, I'm afraid, oh, I'm making too many therapists. Like, because oftentimes they'll think, oh, the only way to do that is to do what you're doing. And it's like, no. You build a bridge. Like, I can't, hammer nails, do things I can't do, but be you doing it, like, because in everything that's happening out there, we need good people. And you're a good person by virtue of the fact that you're sitting here in a therapy room and you're 15 years old, trying to figure out the world and where you fit in it, tells me you're a special person. So you don't have the luxury of just like saying, oh, I'm anxious and I can't make it to school. No, we got to figure that out. We have a mandate. We got to work through it, and then you have to go live a life, and you have crap to do. So let's go.
If you watch any of my videos, you'll often hear me say one of my favorite sayings is "Don't let me down," right? And so with that one saying, it implies so many things. One is that I have faith in you. Two is that I also have the confidence that you're not going to disappoint me. Three is that you love me enough not to want to disappoint me, right? So all of that is backed into. I always say, "Don't let me down. Don't let me down." And I want the boys to know.
Or
that
is
I
that my
expect-
feelings are riding on you, right? Like I'm
Absolutely.
emotionally
I'm emotionally
vulnerable.
tied to you, right? Don't
Right.
don't hurt me,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so that
Right.
pulls on so many different things and not, do what you're supposed to do or make good choices. No, I'm saying don't let me down. We're in this together. I'm counting on you, right? Like my heart is in your hands and show up for me, right? And so when they and they'll look at me when they're done, if there's the school song or if they're doing an interview and they'll say, they'll nod their head. I'm like, you had me, you got me. And that simple bit of understanding is not only interrelational trust, right? It's not only that, but it's also me being vulnerable enough to say that I put my trust in a 15 or 16 or 17-year-old boy who doesn't make the best decisions all the time. And he showed up for me, right? And so then I can look at him and just say, that's like the best. I love my job and I love the work that we do, but to see a young man to give his all just because you believed in him is what brings me back to work every day, right? And that changes the whole dynamic. Again, is that I'm not the person that says do right or do what's expected of you. I'm saying I'm trusting you with my emotions. Show up for me, son. And the kid says, I got you, right? And that changes the whole feeling that we have. And the same thing with, I have a daughter, so I don't have boys at home. So it's a different dynamic. That's another Zoom. We can do that at the next man event. But having the boys and them having a male figure, masculine male figure, right? I could be as gregarious as the best of them. Sometimes I yell and scream lovingly, but to have that and also say that my faith is in you all, right? I work for my boys as much as they think that I work for them. And every time we get some type of recognition or award, I say it's for the boys, right? I actually do what they tell me to do more than anything. And I think that getting students to understand that there's as powerful, if not more powerful than I am, or the work that we do on TV or the awards that we receive, that just gives a system, again, agency. We keep going back to the same thing, is that letting kids know that they matter. And our job as adults is to foster that, right? To foster that understanding that they're just as important in this world as we are, or as they think celebrities are, or athletes are. And I think that's our job, is to don't make sure that they understand that their space in this world is just as important as everyone else's.
I love that. Oh, go ahead, Heidi, please.
I was just going to ask if you could walk us through kind of like a sample moment. Let's say a boy comes to you, or if I'm a mom or a dad, my son comes to me and is like, I screwed up. I cheated on a test and I got caught. I got busted with pot. Name the thing, crashed the car. What's the go-to move? What do you say? What do you do? What do you not say and not do?
Okay, I'll talk. So that's normally what happens. Those are the kinds of things that bring people to therapy, right? Something went sideways, and how do we fix it? How do we right the ship so we can put you out of business? I mean, that's often the whole idea, right? And
there's consequences and accountability that you got to make sure come through. There's also like, let me put this in some context so it's not the end of the world, because their teenage brain thinks everything's the end of the world.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of training there about like how the brain works, and and for like parents who are listening, the Shaka's "Don't Let Me Down" and this whole like you're really important doesn't mean you don't get to parent. Doesn't mean there doesn't get to be a consequence for something that went sideways. That's part of it too, right? That's part of like, hey, I love you enough, I respect you enough that I'm going to draw a line. Your health and safety matters. If you go in a direction that is so counter to what we've talked about, then we're going to have a talk about that, and your freedom might be limited a little bit. That we're going to learn is not the end of the world, but that's part of our contract. So part of this is like kind of being clear about what your contract is with your son in this case, but I think with that, with any of your kids, and that can be a living, breathing thing. To Shaka's point, like, and your point, Heidi, like we might screw this up. We're not going to get this perfect. And so sometimes we might say like, yeah, I know I said you weren't going to be grounded this weekend, but this thing happened. I'm going to have to change my mind on that, So I think it's okay to let the line out and have the talk about the thing that's happened. But like I was talking about earlier with behaviors, like, it is okay to have consequences for behaviors that are unacceptable. What's way more important, and I'm like, go to town. I always tell parents, like, if you have a behavior or consequence or a punishment that you want to levy, I support that. You get to be the parent, you get to have the pillars of your family, and you get to hold those for generations if you want. But you also have to understand the why. Like, if you never get to that, then more things are going to happen, and the divide between you is going to grow if your sole response to the thing, and if you look at each little thing that happens as like even a little cry for help, or even if it's a mistake, a little cry for help, a little like, hey, I could use an assist here. I'm screwing up. Obviously, I'm a little over my skis here. I drank way too much over the weekend. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I could use a partner in this. And I think to recognize that piece as well, it's a lot. Parenting now is hard. Like Shaka, I have one child, he's 28 years old, and I'm glad not to be raising a 13-year-old right now. I think that's really, really hard because you've got to come at parenting from a policing angle a little bit, a loving angle a lot, and an empowering angle in every way. But it's got to have this undertow of, I'm crazy about you. Like, everything that happened today was a disaster. I'm so angry with you, but at the foundation, at the core, you and we are good. I have your back no matter what. Like, if that's your foundation, you can screw up parenting 18 different ways. I assume you can screw up teaching and principling and being a therapist in every different way. If the foundation is, I got your back, we're good, and things have to change.
And say it that overtly.
Yeah. And I think that the idea, I'm sorry to cut you, go ahead, Heidi.
No, I just wanted to underscore, like, do you say to parents, say it that overtly? Like, I mean, that could be a script, right?
100%. Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
go ahead.
I think the idea of the consequence being attached to my feelings towards you is a misnomer, right? This is just the consequence to that action. It doesn't mean I never, when students are disciplined, suspended, or whatever the case, that doesn't mean I love them less. It's just the consequence for their behaviors, right? Like, and if your behavior is you studied extra hard last night and you got an A, it doesn't mean I love you more. I still love you the same. That doesn't waver with how I feel about your actions. So I can admonish behavior without changing the fact that I love you. I love you, and I tell the boys all the time, like because see, we're essentializing it to saying, because I'm upset with you, I'm disappointed in your behavior, that I'm mad at you. I'm not mad at you. My feelings are hurt that you didn't make better decisions, right? That's the emotion that's involved, right? Or I'm disappointed that you chose to do these things, right? It doesn't mean I love you. My love doesn't waver. And so if we try to extricate the way that we feel about our students between what happens when you don't do what's necessary, if you violate the terms of agreement to be in this environment, that means that you're sent home for a couple of days. It doesn't mean that I love you less. It just means that you violated the terms of agreement. It's like getting a ticket. Like, I don't think the police officers that pull me over, I've never been pulled over as a principal. I don't think the police officers that pull me over are actually mad at me for breaking the law, speeding or stop sign, right? I don't think they're mad at me personally. I think that I've violated the law and there's a consequence towards it, right? And so I think that if we kind of essentialize discipline, if we essentialize the consequences of behavior to this just comes with doing this, or this comes with not doing this, right? If you're not careful in the car and you have an accident, then me taking your keys away is just a product of that. And I know it sounds very pragmatic and like, oh, that's great when it's your kid and you love them. But if you say like that just comes with you being a person and it happens, it doesn't mean that there's any ill feelings towards you. I just wish that you would make better decisions, and just know that sometimes these things come. I say this all the time. I learned this early on being an assistant principal, when all you do is discipline. is that if you separate the emotions, I think that the product that you get when you discipline students is so much richer because they understand that you're not disciplining them. You're actually just showing them that there's a consequence to not doing what's necessary to be in this environment. And that just becomes so much richer. And the love that you have for the student doesn't change. It doesn't falter. The love that you have for your children doesn't falter, right? If I can be disappointed at my child for making a bad decision, I can admonish that behavior and say, hey, I don't appreciate you doing that. And say, hey, you know what? Next time I think I want you to think twice, right? Or I won't say that to you. But that doesn't diminish our love. And I think we have to make sure that we stay centralized in the fact that it doesn't change how we feel about the person. It changes how we feel about the action, not the person itself, right? It's important.
I think that's so important. Thank you for framing it that way. And also, just both of you, thank you for giving us the language to put all of this into action for our kids. Because I think back to the point you made earlier, John, where boys say to you, like, I don't know, sometime around 10 or 11, like I started to become the bad guy in the house instead of like, the light and joy of the family. I think that we sort of can go around assuming like, well, my kid knows I love him. I'm the mom, I'm the dad, like whatever. But it's like, do they? I mean, would it hurt to remind them every day, every night after a hard conversation about the thing they screwed up? Like, it definitely wouldn't. And it definitely probably should happen, right? Like, just keep saying it. Keep saying like, we're still good. This doesn't change how much I love you. Just FYI, you know that, right?
I think barraging your kids with this is an underestimated thing, to let them know you love them all the time. One thing that boys tell me a lot is nobody's ever affectionate with them. So, like to hug your kids, to hug your boys, because I've worked with a number of boys and I've asked a few, have you been hugged lately, or have you hugged anybody? I don't remember the last time anybody physically touched me. And that alone, that gesture alone says a lot of what you guys are saying without saying it. I feel inclined to share one like great story that happened a couple of weeks ago. I had a family in session, and their son, 17-year-old boy, was caught dealing, and so they came in here, and I won't use the word he used, but you'll know. He said, I know I'm a loser, I'm an F up. And his dad said, no. You don't get off so easy. You effed up and you're awesome. Like, you're not an F up, you effed up. So you're amazing, so you didn't lose us. Things are going to happen as a result of that, but you haven't lost us. And I thought, like, wow, man, like that was an amazing moment, right? Because he showed like he was disappointed, frustrated, but also like, you still have me. You're not going to lose.
You didn't become that behavior. That was just a behavior. Yeah. We have like 1 more minute. Shaka, what do you want to say?
Just the power in those conversations is actually the student who's able to recognize where they made the mistake is actually that's the learning itself, right? Like, here's the point where I screwed up. And it's always a cognitive thing. I say, so tell me, what could you have done differently, right? When I say that to a student, they say, I could have, this is the real learning. The consequence and none of that matters. Tell me the point where you made the wrong decision that led you down the wrong path, that led you in front of me. If a kid can get to that place through conversation, not discipline, not brute force, not fear, just through conversation, get to the place where they say, this is where I made the wrong decision. Then that's the cognitive change that we need students to have. They say, at this point, I made the wrong decision, and now I'm sitting in front of you trying to explain myself, right? And so that's where we always try to, when we're disciplining students, when I'm talking to young men, I need to know, where did you screw up, right? Tell me the place. If you can get there, then all of my work is done. I have nothing else to tell you. I'll see you in a couple of days when you get back, but tell me where you screwed up. So.
That's awesome.
I like that. I was just going to say the same thing, John. That's awesome right there. What a great conversation. People have been texting me and stuff coming in. They're just loving the three of you guys together. Great content. You've covered so much great ground. I want to remind folks, you can continue this conversation with these three brilliant people at After Hours. The way to come to After Hours, grab in chat. We just put here again, buy a copy of John's new book from our partner bookseller, The Bookstall. In your receipt, they will send a link to register for After Hours. It'll be open for 55 minutes from 8:05 to 9 p.m. come ask your questions, give your observations, chime in. We would love to see all of you there. So do that. So thing one. Thing two, Heidi, thank you so much for yet another great moderation of a conversation. We're always so
pleasure.
grateful to you for your efforts. Thank you so much. I'm going to
Okay.
pivot to two quick questions I have, and I'm going to parcel them out because one is a little bit more school environment related. One is, of course, Shaka, honest to God, if you ever want to quit that school thing, I think you got a future as a therapist, just putting it right there. So I'll start with you. So I'll start with you, Shaka. So question is, quickly, which is that, do you have any thoughts on what needs to change? This is from Elizabeth. Any thoughts on what needs to change in order to make schools more friendly and understanding to boys at all grade levels, but particularly at the younger grades? I'm guessing the number of boys medicated versus girls is significantly higher in order to get them to be more flat or passive and better fit in the classroom setting. So do you have quick thoughts on?
Man, that's a
Yeah,
good
quick
question.
thought. What needs to change is the way adults think about young boys, right? We educate young boys as if they were girls, right? As if everything's the same. And we've seen systemically, empirically, that it's not working. So what needs to change is the way we think about, the way we engage with young boys. It's different, people. Boys are different. Girls are different. People are different. So if we try to create more nimble environments, nimble school systems that can adapt to the needs of individuals, that can adapt to the needs of boys, I think that we'll find we're more successful. But I'll just tell you, empirically, we show schools aren't working for boys, particularly Black and brown boys. That's my target demographic. Schools don't work systemically for us, and the numbers bear out. So we need to change the way we think about educating folks on mass scales. It doesn't, the production model, the mass model, the neoliberal model of educating everyone the same way and an efficiency model is not effective. And we're seeing the numbers bear that out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've long advocated since when my son was very, very young, he's now 23, about what could be done to support getting more men as teachers in elementary schools in particular. I could count like on one finger the number of male teachers, two fingers, number of male teachers my son had like through fifth grade. It would just be kind of nice to see a little bit of that balance sometimes. Not that that's any big answer either. For John, Robin is asking, would love some tips on how to work on helping a teen boy identify and feel safe feeling and expressing emotions when it all comes out as anger and knows that, and the parent knows it's all cockiness or overconfidence.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's okay to let that be a stepwise process. I think sometimes we want to squeeze everything into a moment, but I think it's okay to let your guy let the anger out, right? This is the way he knows how to express emotions. And then it's okay to let some time pass if he's hot and he can't get out of that moment. But if he's calm enough, it's okay to say, so what else do you feel? Like, I get that you feel anger. I feel that on your behalf. You can even add, you can pile on there, but there's a lot of emotions and we hardly ever feel just one. So what else do you feel? This sounds so rudimentary. There are these feelings face charts that therapists use sometimes with little kids, but people sometimes just use a list of feelings for teenage boys. I have one that I pull out sometimes because they're like, sometimes they just don't have the words they need. And when they see it, they're like, that's it. I'm frustrated, or, my feelings
Scared.
hurt,
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
I'm
reminds me
scared.
of,
And so
sorry.
to literally provide them the language, even if it's written, or to give them a couple of options, and full permission, like, whatever you're feeling is fine. And you know what? You might fall apart in here, and I might too. Like, I always make sure I'm working with a teenage boy that there is a box of Kleenex on both sides of the table, because either one of us could fall apart during the session. And that doesn't have anything to do with who's the tougher guy.
Yep, I hear you. All right, we're at 8 o'clock. I want to note that reminds me so much of Mark Brackett's work, being an emotion scientist, and the whole piece where he's really encouraging people to develop more nuanced vocabularies to identify their emotional states. Anger, I'm mad. Mad is like 27 different things, and understanding the nuance and being able to identify it. And, kids who come in using the ruler, it's called the ruler approach, coming into a classroom and like, what's your emotion today? Are you mad? Are you disgruntled? Are you furious? Are you irritated? Like, just seeing those nuances and beginning to like just touch and gauge yourself is just so important. Anyway, enough on that. Now we're at 8:01, we're a minute late, and I said we would not end late. Now we're a minute late because of me. Everyone come to After Hours, come hang out with these 3-level people. We're going to give them a 5-minute break. So we hope to welcome you at After Hours and welcome you back to Fan in the future as well. Mwah, chef's kiss to all 3 of you. Great job.